of in terms of more casual spaces, I think you know, you can be a once a year kind of restaurant, or you can be a twice a week kind of restaurant, right? Or you can be once a month kind of restaurant. A lot of that has to do with your prices, right? That's like that's the biggest factor, right? You know, am I going to drop $500 every time I go here? Well, then unless I'm super affluent, that's going to be a once every 3 months type of situation. If I can get in and out with, you know, if I can get in and out with, you know, I get a glass of wine and a pasta and get in and out for $45 or less, then that could be a weekly type of destination. So Sempre is definitely striving to kind of hit both ends of the spectrum, right? If you want to come here and treat yourself, you can, and if you want something that's a little bit more approachable for your family, or you just want to be in and out in an hour, there's offerings for that too. You know, it's not enough to have a building with 4 walls anymore. Not that it ever was, but you know, I think that there is an influx of restaurateurs that are putting, you know, facelift. There's a lot. What I'm saying is there's a lot of old restaurants in New York that need facelifts, and a lot of restaurateurs are applying those facelifts and kind of getting them to where they need to be. To meet the level of what you can experience nowadays. You know, now when a restaurant opens, it's beautiful. There's many beautiful restaurants in the city, and Sempre is one of those restaurants. And then from are more skillful and have been in the industry for much longer. Exactly. And a lot of times the market vets the restaurant, right? Yeah. So most restaurants close within, you know, I think the number is like 2 years. And so a lot of times the market vets the restaurant, and then, you know, with the rest of the accolades, you have things like James Beard, Guide Michelin, you know, New York Times. You have all the accolades from all of the food industry publications that can also help to vet a restaurant. So once those things start to really roll in, then you start to attract some top talent. And then you never lose track of your opening team. You never lose track of those people. They've invested and they've done an incredible job, and you know, everybody has different points in their lives where they just, you know, they're moving out. You know, even here I've had a few people, they moved out of state because of family issues, and there's turnover that is more than just, it can be life-based, not necessarily, you know, profession-based. So, you know, I really, you know, I have to be honest with myself about my journey, and it hasn't always been great. You know, I haven't always been the most focused person. And so, you know, when I first moved here, I was involved in a separate industry entirely. I was in the performing arts a bit, and so, you know, during that year, I really didn't take, you know, restaurants seriously. And then, you know, after I exited that career, because I didn't really fall in love with it, I really didn't feel the passion for it, and moved into, you know, restaurants more full time. Even so, I still wasn't focused. It was something that I was doing. It was a lot of fun, and I kind of walked into some pretty high-profile openings, and some really, my nature pushes me towards being challenged in things I don't know, and so I've worked in some, you know, I've worked with Greek food, Nordic food, Italian food, American food, Korean food. A lot of the steps that I've taken have been to kind of push myself to educate better, to learn different service styles, and, you know, to know about cuisine is to know about culture, because, you know, food comes from the culture and the geographic locations and that countries are based in. And so it's also been a lot about learning different lifestyles from across the world. And it's a very, I won't overhype it too much, you know, in New York, opening a restaurant for the American consumer, you know, we are getting a somewhat more, you know, kind of distilled version of what authentic native foods are, right? Mm-hmm. So like, you know, Korean food in Korea, you know, you can be as authentic as possible, but you need something that'll plate well for the American consumer. And so there's always little allowances that are taken. And more in modernization, in a lot of ways that makes a lot of food, you know, really great, and other times it, you know, maybe is more experiential and more educational, and you got to talk about it a bit more and kind of explain what this is and why it is. But even so, different cultures also have different restaurant like cultures, right? So if you're working in a Greek restaurant then a lot of times there's different styles of service, right? Not just with the food, but with the dining experience and with the people that work there, right? So everything really just changes depending on what cuisine, what culture you're working with. And so a lot of my journey was really exploring, okay, I've got this, you know, I spent a year here, this is great. I want to move on to the next place and learn something different with new cuisine, new culture, new steps of service, new dining culture, right? Certain cultures are very communal, other ones can be very formal, you know, and so there's this wide range of experiences that I chased in my early years. And then as time went on, it's like, okay, it's, you know, I got married at one point, and it was very much about getting really serious, right? You know, not serving tables anymore, and serving tables is a profession in and of itself, but building a skill set towards restaurant management, right? There's a time where that flip kind of came in, and so as time went on, I just continued to invest and grow the skill set there. And there's schools where you can learn a lot of this stuff. I didn't go to any of them, and so a lot of it was trial and error and figuring out my own temperament and what I could be good at and what I, you know, the things that I'm not good at, and understanding that I need a well-rounded team to kind of help me fill in my gaps. And so it's just been a lot of growth in those areas, and a lot of growth fueled by, you know, a lot of restaurants in New York who collectively kind of parented me to where I am today. Question. I mean, there's no book really that tells you exactly what to do. And so much of what we do, there's dozens of different kinds of people that you come into contact every day, and all of them have to be, you know, managed in a different way, not just staff, but also guests. And every restaurant has a different set of standards, and every restaurant and every culture and every it's all different and varied, right? And so there's really no book, you know, and while I wouldn't recommend moving, you know, jumping around from restaurant to restaurant like I did, and I say like I did, you know, I spent 1 to 3 years in all of my places, but really it's just about trying to gather as well-rounded of an experience as possible, and understanding that, you know, turnover is high in restaurants, right? People move from restaurant to restaurant very quickly, 4 months here, 6 months there, and they bring their experiences from their past restaurants to their current restaurant, right? And a lot of times you just have to make sure that you're open and inclusive to learning from other people who bring something from where they were. And I think going back to the institutional knowledge, there's no book, right? It's like a collective restaurant organism, right? Where we can all, you have a bunch of restaurant professionals walk into a restaurant or walk into a bar who all have shared experiences at a restaurant. And collectively you can all kind of talk. They do really great work there. They know what they're doing. They're on top of what they're doing. Staff is incredibly well educated. Their sommelier is a rock star who has educated the team. You know, every captain there is also a som. Collectively, we can all agree that these places are really knocking it out of the park, and in a lot of ways that kind of becomes a standard, right? And so there's sort of this organism that it's not written down anywhere. It's really just about who you're talking to in the circles that you walk in, and which type of experience fits you best. You know, I think fast casual or QSR styles of service are incredibly important, and the mechanics behind serving people from behind a counter, like a barista or like a cafe or bakery, the mechanics of that are very different from the full service model. And if you've never worked in the full service model, it can be tough to learn those mechanics, right? And so then not only do you have this collective organism that kind of talks about these places, you also have different I don't want to say levels, because nothing is less than any other, but you have different worlds, right? You'll have like your QSR fast casual, you'll have your full service dining, you know, you'll have your you know, restaurants where maybe the servers have like 10 table sections, right? They're not able to give that, you know, that super intimate, and it's more high volume, right? And then you'll have the restaurants where, you know, you have, you know, blow it out all the way, you go full fine dining, you'll have captain, server, support, or server's assistant, with the 4 table section, and the steps and the table touches for their steps of service are very high. And you'll have different spheres where people kind of talk and agree and collectively agree. And after COVID, a lot of those people that talk and agree on kind of what the standard is, a lot of them disappeared, right? And so one of my favorite questions to ask people nowadays is what is fine dining to you? Right, and the range of answers I get is so vast. And for me, fine dining simply means attentive to detail. It means that you're fully educated about the products that you're serving, and that you move with intention whenever it comes to every step of service, your table maintenance, the mechanics of ringing in orders on a computer, the intentionality behind all of that, and the attention to detail whenever it comes to executing all of those little steps to make an experience go perfectly, that to me is fine dining. Fine dining is not white tablecloths. It's not, everyone wears a suit and tie. It's not the decor. It's not any of that. It's simply about, how committed you are to, first of all, making people happy, right? And then if you're committed to making people happy, the rest of the standards kind of fall in line. No, it's not okay that you messed up an order. No, it's not okay that you brought them the wrong cocktail or that you rang it in wrong. Or once you're committed to making people happy and giving people a seamless, technically masterful experience, then the rest of it falls in line, and little by little you become fine dining, right? And you kind of get to that point where you're where you can stand proud on the standards that you have, and you can apply that anywhere, right? You could be at McDonald's. And I started at McDonald's. That was one of my first jobs in New York. And McDonald's gets a lot of hate, but honestly, their training programs, their regimens, the way they have things mapped out, their training is some of the best training in the world. I was a McDonald's restaurant manager at 17 years old, and that was where I got a lot of my first bouts of training. And even then, what I call McDonald's fine dining, probably not. But again, you can take a lot of the nods and the attention to detail, and you can walk past a pickle on the floor and you pick up the pickle, right? You can, if a guest is upset that you made their order wrong, you need to apologize and make it right, And it's not about the food, it's not about the space, it's not about, although all of those come together and help to add to the experience. But if your team isn't first focused on just making the people happy through flawless service and attention to what's happening in front of them, then it's tough to get to that standard. Yeah. I think that, first of all, there's no perfect system, right? You could do a pooled house. You could do a pooled house with a separate bar pool and separate server pool. You could do everybody keeps their own tip, and then you tip out based on sales. But I'm tipping out based on sales, but the barista doesn't run any of my food for me, so why am I tipping out on my food sales to the barista, right? And so there's so many different systems that can cause a lot of problems, and there's no perfect system, even with a pooled house, first off. Some places have gratuity included, which is service included, which is very nice. And the biggest thing to remember is that all of this is optional. They can't actually force you to pay the gratuity. There's different ways that it's taxed and yada yada, and a lot of different restaurant groups have different policies regarding how they add gratuities, right? Some will say different things. It's very layered. It's a very layered topic, but some places have service included, and a lot of times that's as a way to kind of help the guest, kind of take the pressure off and kind of relieve the stress of it. Most people generally will leave 20%, and if they want to leave more, they will, right? But most people are just, I would say a lot of people are very happy just knowing that 20% is already there, right? You don't have to sit there and carry the one and do math in front of their friends, because it's not about the check, right? The check is the most stressful part of the evening, honestly. And when it comes to pooled houses versus service included pooled houses, or when it comes to everybody keeps their own tips, I found that if you don't have a pooled house, it opens up a whole rift of problems. A server may have a really slow night, right? Or may get tables with kids that kids don't spend money, right? And there can be a whole lot of layers to what happens on a night that can really impact someone's income, right? And it all kind of goes back to the tip system and how fundamentally how that works to get us all paid. But when you start doing that, it can open up conflict. It can really get in the way of what you're trying to do, which is make people happy, right? You can have people, if it's not a pooled house, then essentially your goal is to create as many regulars as possible, blow people out of the water, and when they come back, make sure they ask for you. That way they sit in your section and you can take care of them and essentially guarantee revenue for yourself. It works to a certain degree until it doesn't work, and then they're upset because the host or the maitre d' or the manager didn't do what they're supposed to do. It causes a lot of problems. And so when it comes to pooled houses, I find that it's more collaborative, it's more team-based. Every table is everybody's responsibility, and we are all here with a singular purpose, which is to make the guests happy and kind of give them the experience that they want, right? For us, we come to work every day and it's just a job sometimes. But for a lot of diners, it's very intimate, 2 hours of their lives, and we're spending 2 hours of their lives with them, and 2 hours is a long time. You probably 2 hours for you. The amount of work you can get done in 2 hours is crazy, right? So these people are in the middle of very serious problems in our world. Money's getting tighter, things are getting more expensive. More now more than ever, it's so important that you respect people's time and money. And pooled houses are a great way to make sure that everybody's time and money is respected.